Alright, first we're going to look at quiz 1, explain some of the things. Just remember the best thing you can do is fast forward to the questions that you need to see and make sure you jot down whatever is going on. Other than that, the number 1 question wanted you to sketch and label. A lot of you messed up on the label portion of it. Just make sure you understand again the difference between a positive relationship and a negative relationship. It says the number of days increase, the amount of space decreases. Typically the first thing you're talking about is going to be your independent variable, so number of days would be here, and the second part would be amount of space. Do not be afraid to write long labels if that's what it needs to be. Don't just put days in space. I mean, you can, but if your label's not descriptive enough, that could also be an issue. The thing here is, as the number of days increase, the amount of space decreases. That is a negative relationship because one going up and one going down means that those two don't agree with each other, and so you want to make sure you have a negative slope, which is why we did that problem where I asked you what the slope was, or what a negative and positive slope was. And so what you want to do is make sure you have a graph that shows this situation here going down to 0. That should have been the graph you had. Again, as number of days increase, that would be this part. So as number of days goes forward, notice that your amount of space is going down where eventually it reaches 0. Alright. As weight increases, the number of injuries increases. Again, looking at this, here's your first statement. I think we'll call this weight. And this would be number of injuries. And again, notice as one goes up, the other one also goes up. It could even be the case that when one goes down, the other goes down. As long as they're going the same direction, this is a positive relationship, which means that you should have a positive slope, and so you should be starting at 0 and moving up in that general direction. So again, most of you missed it because of the label part, so just make sure that on the test you label that stuff and do what you're supposed to do on that so you can get all the possible points you can. Again, the key thing on this test, the key thing on these questions is taking your time and making sure you answer every single part of that question. For example, when you see this question on the test, you're going to probably be asked to do whether it's linear. You're probably going to be asked to tell or represent it with an equation, and you're probably going to be asked to graph it, which is going to be a little bit extra stuff, but again, you just got to make sure you're ready for all that. But again, the first thing I would do is just read the problem before. It says determine whether it's linear or non-linear, pretty much. Again, linear means that what you want to do, and this is again where a lot of you messed up, second minus first, so 7.9 minus 9.3 gives me that number, but it's not negative 1.4 because this is moving by 2, so remember that we need to divide by 2, which is negative 0.7. Then we do 7.2 minus 7.9, which we know to be negative 0.7. And then we do 5.1 minus 7.2, which is negative 2.1, but notice that this is moving by 3, and so you divide by 3. That again is the part that a lot of you are missing out on, which makes this negative 0.7. The fact that all 3 of these are here, we know that it's linear. Because it's linear, and again this is part of what you have to make sure you get by Friday, because it's linear, it means we can use the y equals mx plus b. You can only use this formula when it's linear. You cannot use this formula when it's nonlinear because this is a linear problem. This is when you have a constant m, a slope that does not change at all, and you have a point that gives you where the line would intersect with the y-axis. Either way, what you do here is remember that you need to take one point, which is usually this one, take your 9.3 and plug it in, take your m, plug it in, take your x, which in this case is 0, and plug it in. That's good because anything times 0 is usually going to be 0, which means in the end it's just 9.3 equals b. And so we end up with, again, don't stop there because that's not the rule. Your rule always has a y equals of some sort, so it's going to be y equals negative 0.7x plus 9.3. And again, the good news is you could actually check that out by plugging the numbers into the calculator and making sure it matches. I'll go ahead and do that. So negative 0.7 times 0 plus 9.3 is 9.3. Remember, you can hit up to steal that information. Go back and turn your 0 into a 2. Notice you get the 7.9, And if you can match 3 numbers, then you're probably in good shape. So we're going to try 6 here. And notice that 6 gives me 5.1, so that works like I need it to. 3 and 4 were very straightforward. These aren't what you'll see on the quiz, but again, just finding the value of m shouldn't be that bad. You just got to be careful on it. You do second minus first. 13 minus 7 is 6. 19 minus 13 is 6. 25 minus 19 is 6. You should have had something about m being equal to 6. It did not say write a rule. Again, you need to make sure you know what the terms are asking for. Find the value of m means I need the slope, I need the rate of change. The rate of change on this is 6. Just like on number 4, this distance is not 2. You want to make sure if you want to make sure you got it, type it in. Second minus first is negative 8. Second minus first, so negative 11 minus negative 3 is also negative 8. And then negative 19 minus negative 11, again, minus is how you find the distance, is also negative 8. So you should have said that the rate of change is negative 8 on that. Alright, so outside of that, that would be what you're looking at there. Alright. Write a rule that represents the function. This is where you need to make sure you understand when to use y equals mx plus b and when to use the table. Again, make a note for yourself. If the first check works, y equals mx plus b. If the second check works, you want to use the table with x squared because it was your second check. If the third check works, you want to do a table with x to the third. That is the 3 options you have to be ready for whenever you're asked to make it to find a rule. Again, check the first part. If it matches, you use y equals mx plus b. Check the second part. If it matches, you use a table with x squared. Check the third time. If it matches, then you use a table with x to the third. Outside of that, again, here's what we're doing. So we've got 9 to 12, which is 3. We've got 12 to 15, which is 3. 15 to 18, which is 3. 18 to 21, which is 3. That is a first check, which means the first thing I need to do is use y equals mx plus b. I then choose one point, y in that case being 9 because that's x and y, m being 3, x being 1. You then get 9 equals 3 plus b. You subtract 3 from both sides, getting 6 equals b, and again that would be your answer, 3x, because that's your m, plus 6, and again test that. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 6 does make 9. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 6 does make 12, and check a third one. 3 times 3 is 9, plus 6 does make 15. You could even go so far as 3 times 5 is 15, plus 6 makes 21. Just make sure you understand again what you need out of that so you're ready to go. Number 6's rule goes from 5, looks like 19, wow, to 37 to looks like 61. So the first check, that means there is no y equals mx plus b, can't use it. Now you check here, you get 14 for that one. You get looks like 18 for that one. And looks like 24 for this one, so that means x squared is out. Check this last part, that is 6, that is also 6, which means that x to the third is it, which means we need a table with x, x to the third, and y. And again, take the numbers here, 1, 4, 2, 11, 330, 467, 5, 128, and then go ahead and take your 1 and plug it in. Again, if you don't know what you're doing, just hit 1 caret 3 for 1 to the third, 2 caret 3 for 2 to the third, 3 caret 3 for 3 to the third, but don't mess that up because that makes all the difference in you getting to where you need to be. We found out 3 to the third is 27, 4 to the third is 64, 5 to the third is 125, and again, once you make the proper table, you don't need this anymore. You're asking yourself how you get from column 2 to column 3, which we should be able to see is to add 3, and so you write your rule as y equals whatever your base is, which is x to the third, adding 3. Again, you're taking whatever is in x to the third, adding 3 to it to get y. That would be the rule that you end up with. Do not write this, because common sense says this is not adding 3, that's multiplying by 3. Now if this was 1 to 3, 8 to 24, and so on, then you would use that. But the 3, if you are adding 3, it makes sense that you should not be putting the 3 directly attached to x. Our chapter 1 work said that if you attach those two, that's multiplication. Adding 3 means you put plus 3 next to the root and make sure you have a y equals attached to that. All right. Number 7, determine whether it's linear or nonlinear. Again, here you just got to be careful. That's down 3. I mean, you have to assume that every test, every quiz you take has a trick question. Please don't fall for it just because the first two match and assume it's linear. Why would we want to do that and make it easy? It's typically going to be a trick question of some sort, and if it's not, that's great, but you have to approach every single question as if it's a trick question. This should have been nonlinear. And then the last thing here is a question about matching the graph. Again, you are going to see a question like this. It's not going to be probably as easy as this one, but I mean, it should have been okay. But looking at this, this is adding 60. This is adding 60. This is adding 60, which means that that can't be A. Either one of these two could be A. This adds, looks like 45. This adds 25. This adds 10, which means this is nonlinear. And noticing that both of these are linear means that this has to be your answer for number 9, because that's the only nonlinear one. Again, linear would mean that these things match all the way through, which means it's between these two. This is going up 50, and up 50. So it's really hard to kind of make that call. So here's what I would do. I would look at the low and the high points, noticing that this starts at 50 and ends around 200. This starts slightly above 50 and ends higher than that. So looking at the ones here, this stops at 200. This stops at 240. Notice that that's at 200, which means that this has to be your answer for A, and this has to be your answer for C. Okay. So outside of that, like I said, make sure you study whatever it is. Find those problems back in your homework. Practice them. Ask about them. If you can't find them, let me know. I'll try to find it with you. But again, just make sure you get some practice on that stuff, because you have to know exactly what to do when that question pops up, especially when they use the y equals mx plus b or the table.